Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome anchor from WABC TV, Sade Badrinois, and her guests, Olympic champions Mark Spitz and Ian Thorpe.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Did you get a night rest? You feel charged, ready to go? Your Excellencies, it is a pleasure to be here today. You know, yesterday we spoke to two Olympic champions, Carl Lewis and Jean-Marie Perec, and they were incredible. Well, now we're going to speak to two other Olympic champions, and wait until you hear their stories. They have so much passion, and when you hear their backstories, I think you're going to fall in love with them even more so. So let's take a listen. Gentlemen, Mark, you are a multiple Olympic champion in swimming. You've won 11 Olympic medals, 9 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze, and you won 7 medals in the 1972 games. Not bad.
Thank you very much. It's also a pleasure to be here in Doha and to participate in this fine forum, and it's an honor for me to be here.
What do you do with all of those medals? Where are they?
They're actually in a bank vault.
In a bank vault?
That's right. Immediately in 1972, after I had competed in swimming, I decided to put them at the bank so that nobody would get the idea they could find them in my home. It's worked, actually.
So when you all of a sudden you get the urge, you got to see the medals, you just go to the bank and take a look?
Well, I don't get the urge to see them, actually. But I can look at them in some pictures that have been taken with me with the medals on my chest, so that's how I remember them.
Well, Ian, let me get you in here. You're an Aussie superstar, a rock star for sure. You were the youngest individual world champion at age 14. He achieved so much. You have broken 22 world records. You won 9 Olympic medals, 11 world titles, and is considered Australia's greatest ever Olympian with 5 gold medals, 3 silver, 1 bronze. Wow, what a resume. How thrilling is that, you know, for you? You achieved so much success so young. Was it difficult to handle all of that notoriety?
Well, it was difficult, but of course when you're at that age, when you're very young, you feel like you can take on the world. So there's a level of naivety that you have, that you bring, and you know, you just think you can do anything. But then later on, I think, you know, this all catches up to you. You know, these kind of pressures that you'll put in a very adult situation. You thought you were dealing with them well, but perhaps you weren't.
You weren't. Okay, well, let's step back a little bit. Let's talk about when you came into the sport. And Ian, I know for you, this was by accident. It was an accidental occurrence.
Complete accident that I ended up doing all of the things that I did in the pool. I only started swimming because my sister broke her arm falling off a hill that was about this high, and the doctor recommended she start swimming to strengthen her wrist. Now, I got dragged along to all these swimming carnivals, and I got really bored. So I started, my mom said if I trained once a week, I could probably swim at these carnivals as well. So I started once a week. I found out that I was allergic to chlorine. So I got sick from that.
Allergic to chlorine, think about that, you're a swimmer.
Yeah, but I enjoyed what I was doing, so that's how I started out. And then things progressed quite quickly from there.
And clearly you got over the chlorine, you kind of grew out of that?
I grew out of it,
okay.
So yeah.
Thank goodness for us.
Yes.
And Mark, how about you?
I started also by accident. My best friend, I was 9 years old, his mother and my mother put us into a YMCA camp program from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3. And I came home very upset because one of the activities was to watch some sand melt on a little piece of copper in an enclave, an oven, and making earrings, ceramic earrings for my mother. And my global sense of what was going to happen to me in my life at 9 was that was what I was doing for all summer, making jewelry. And I said, that's not what I wanted to do. But I was informed that there was a program, a swimming program, and I went out for that swimming program. And little did I know that the instructor was watching who could swim across the pool without stopping. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the lucky 4 of that day to not stop, and I was asked to go out on the swim team, and that's how it happened.
And that was it.
Otherwise, I wouldn't even be here to talk to you today.
And you took off from there. What is your favorite moment? You have, both of you have this long resume of all of these achievements. Is there a favorite that comes to mind?
My favorite moment, I think, was my very last race at the Olympic Games in 1972.
Why?
Because it was the end of my journey as an athlete, and that I had trained for 14 years, 26,000 miles, and that I'd had a lot of positive things that happened and some very negative things that happened, at least in my mind, and I overcame those, and I was extremely successful, and I went out on the most positive note that I could imagine. And to me, that day, it was, I think, September 3rd, 1972.
And what about your worst moment? I know that you had, I think it was your 6th gold medal, your 100-meter freestyle in Munich in 1972. Tell everyone about that with Vladimir Bure.
Well, that race was an important race for me, the 6th gold medal in 1972, because if I hadn't won that race, and I was the world record holder, it was the premier sprint event, so I wouldn't have been noticed and recognized as the fastest swimmer in the world. They had 15 contested events in the Olympics back in 1972, and if I had won 14 of them, but not that event, that person that won the 100 free would be known as the fastest swimmer in the world, just like the 100 dash or the 100 meters in track and field. But I think the most disappointing race I ever had in my life was in Mexico City, the Olympic Games in the 100-meter butterfly, where I was the world record holder and I got 2nd place. It cost me a gold medal, not only in getting the 2nd, but I wasn't then allowed to swim on the relay, which was another gold medal. And the last event of the Olympics in 1968 was the 200-meter butterfly. Had I swum the same time or 2 seconds even slower in the finals, I would have won. I got dead last. So to me, the gentleman that beat me was named Doug Russell, and that's why I won 7 gold medals 4
And
years
that's
later.
why. So that's what it did to you. It made you to be even more determined
Confidence.
next time around. And for Ian, for you, how about you? Was there a difficult moment for you in this whole career?
Look, there was multiple difficult moments. I think of, all of the things that, kind of happen over a career, and most are positive. But, the level of scrutiny that I was under, throughout most of my life, growing up in the public eye, was tough. I was accused of taking drugs when I was just turned 17 by the head coach of the German team. This is before the Sydney Olympics. So that was tough. But I also, and I've only recently started speaking about this. I suffer from depression, so I've had all of this tremendous success, and behind all of this, sometimes I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. Where everyone else was enjoying my performances, I wasn't getting, that sense of joy and adulation that came from it. And so I had to struggle with that and train on top of it. So, I realized that was probably a struggle that, people haven't known about, and often they don't know that side of sport.
Yeah, and I don't think that many stars really have the courage to be able to really show their vulnerabilities and something that they're dealing with that is, I read that you actually had, you thought about committing suicide. Those are really serious issues. What compelled you to say, I need to shine a light on this and tell the world?
Well, the first thing is I didn't tell anyone. Like, only doctors knew that I had depression. I didn't want people to know. I was embarrassed. That's how I felt about it. I looked at my life and I had everything. So I felt like there was nowhere to go to. And so with depression, it's the struggle between being completely rational most of the time, and then these periods where you're irrational, and thoughts like that come into your head. So.
And was it hard to figure out that you actually had it? Because I'm thinking about the sport that you're in. You've got all of these incredible highs, and maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm just depressed because I'm tired of training day in or day out. I'm not having that social life, meeting my friends. Was it difficult to uncover the mask?
It could have been, because I wasn't willing to accept it for a long time, that I would put it down to other things. But when I look back, even in my very early years, before, all of the exposure and whatnot, I had symptoms of depression. It would be something that I would be dealing with, whether I'm in sport or outside of sport. And the only reason I recently spoke about this was because, I realized that I didn't really know anyone. I didn't know that it was okay to talk to people about having this. And for people not to feel embarrassed to talk to people that they're close to, that can actually help you. That was the worst thing that I did, was not tell my friends and family and kept it to myself.
Did depression at all aid you in swimming?
Aid me, no.
Aid you.
Aid me.
Yeah. Did it?
But the only thing I will say, I managed my depression. At competition, I was at my very best. But what goes up must come down. And when I am competing, psychologically, I don't think there's anyone better than me when I go out there and race. So, if we talk about sports psychology, this is completely separate. So, I used to always manage it well in the pool and in that really intense environment.
And how do you develop that? I was talking to some of the athletes yesterday. I think that's something that everybody can really take away, that mental determination. How do you develop that like a muscle?
Well, it's working on it. I used to, when I train, I think about what it's going to feel like when I'm racing. I put noises, I put crowds everywhere, and as I'm swimming laps in training, I'm thinking about how this is going to feel when I race. And then, I also think, it's how you act around the pool. I'm always really calm, and I sit back in my chair like this before I race. I chat to people. But as soon as I'm about to go out to race, when they call us to race, I sit up, I stand up, and, I make myself, I'm ready. And you carry that to the race, and then you make sure you carry it out of the race when you've won. You never use the ladder to get out of the pool. You always jump out of the pool full of energy, so that everyone thinks it's easy. You can collapse backstage, but make it look easy when you're on pool deck.
And Mark, how about you? Your determination?
Well, when I first started swimming, of course, I didn't have the ability to be able to swim in a lot of different events and do very well. I was very small as an individual stature-wise when I was a youngster, and so I swam the 1,500 meters freestyle, and I said to my coach after swimming 30 laps in a 50-meter pool, and I came within 0.2 of a second breaking the world record, I said, I think I need to pick another event. I don't want to swim 30 laps. How about the events that only have 2 laps in it? And he told me that I was too small, and that, of course, just fired me up to prove him wrong. So I started swimming an 8-lap race, and my first world record was the 400-meter freestyle. And then I said, but that's still too far, so I dropped down to 200s and 100s. And so over a period of time, I learned how to swim in multiple events, building my confidence, one event after another. And that gave me, obviously, the vision to try to do that in 1972. And the funny thing is that I get asked this question all the time around the world is, well, why would I want to swim in so many events when there was so much possibility of failure? And I came up with this little statement, and it's the truth for anybody that has a dream, whether or not it's to compete in the Olympics in one event or several events or to be successful in life. And that was that it was the mystery, the magic, the wonder, and the innocence of never having done it before personally. And that became the seeds of creativity that developed into my personal success story. So in speaking for the last almost 40 years to people that are young athletes or people that want to be successful, I say, you have to have a vision, you have to have a dream, and that your destiny is not going to be a matter of chance. It's a matter of being proactive in the decision on a regular basis. And I know that I share that same common denominator with Ian and all other Olympians that have been successful, that it was our destiny was something that we challenged for ourselves, and it was something that we didn't sit around and have somebody hand to us. We were very much involved in the decision-making process, and that's how you become successful. But it's one day at a time and never looking back and always having a positive attitude. That was sort of my philosophy. And
I'm going to add to Mark, I think also it's about taking risks, especially when you're younger, when you set out to win 7 Olympic gold medals. It's being prepared to take that risk. And as a career goes on, it becomes more calculated, where you do the training because you're expected to make this performance. But when you're younger, and I think this is why you can be successful when you're younger, is you're prepared to do things that no one's ever done before. But as you get a bit older, you do the kind of training that you know has worked in the past, and so you become calculated in your career.
Let's talk about the business side of swimming and the endorsement deals. And I know you actually created many inroads. Ian is able to benefit by some of the inroads that you made with endorsements. Share that with everyone.
Well, first of all, if you go back 40 years ago, the Olympic Games was totally amateur, and therefore you could not accept any endorsement or a licensing type of a relationship with sponsors. It wasn't allowed. So it was very well defined for me as an athlete that my swimming career was for the enjoyment of the career, and to personally accomplish just winning a gold medal, or several in this instance, at the Olympic Games. But immediately after the Olympics in 1972, I was offered, and I don't talk about money, but I was offered, because to me this was an extraordinary amount of money, I was offered $50,000 US in 1972 to take a picture with my 7 gold medals. And I said, wow, this is fantastic. I can now pay for my dental school. I can get a new car. I can go get a stereo, and all these things that as a young man, it was important to me. And so I was sort of a pioneer in that way. And that before the end of that year in 1972, I had millions of dollars worth of endorsement contracts. And I said, wow, this is the life. But that opportunity wasn't to come for a lot of many more years after I had had that success, until an American named Matt Biondi was challenging winning a bunch of gold medals like I. And then again, a number of years later, we had then Ian, who then had tremendous amount of endorsement opportunities, because in 1988, the IOC changed the rules allowing professionalism into sport. And then, of course, it was Katie bar the door, and you have Michael Phelps, who has made $1 million worth of contracts, but that's sort of exclusive. And I can count those people that have been successful from the Olympic Games literally on the fingers of my 2 hands. So it's not an opportunity for everyone, but an opportunity is out there.
And maximizing that opportunity. And for you, Ian, you said no to a couple of things. You said, I'm not going to go that direction.
Yeah, look, you have to add your moral values to this as well, what you believe in. So if I won anything from any prize money from swimming or anything from that, I used to give the money away. I didn't want that to be a commercial thing. I was happy to promote products that I believed in, that I used, that I liked. I was offered a tremendous sum of money to endorse a fast food chain. And, you know, it was one of those things I said no, and I was encouraged by my agent to look at the numbers. And the numbers, you know, it's one of those things, you know, how much are you prepared to sell out for? And I'm really proud that I didn't. And I think that we have to take a stand as athletes, and we have to make a decision that what we're doing, are we actually promoting sport as a whole here? And I think in taking those short-term opportunities, that saying it's okay to promote junk food to people is not acceptable for athletes to be doing.
I think that's a great point. You know, we have so many students that are here. Again, we've got 400 students from around the globe, and talking about the responsibility and really being in charge of your life, you know, who you are, what are your ethos, that it's not just about money. Well, what would you say to all of these other students as they're beginning to make their way into this world, and what do you think it's important for them to remember?
Well, personally, I think that I sort of tapped on this just in a question earlier when I was saying that they need to have a focus and a set of dreams. They need to have a game plan. They need to look and observe someone that maybe is successful out there that they would like to emulate, find out what kind of training, what kind of things that made those people successful. Try to put yourself into that environment. I know that my environment was extremely creative. I went to a swim team where there was a swimmer named Don Scholander. I was 14 and he was 18. He had just come back from the Tokyo Olympic Games in 1964 and he had 4 gold medals, and I swam right next to him every day. So my world was right next to me, and the relevance of the best in the world and how I stacked up in workout was there every day, and I'm sure Ian has similar stories.
Putting yourself in a place for success, being around others who are successful.
Yeah, it's a good environment. It can be an intimidating environment as well. As we look here, and we have a lot of students here as well, you know, we have top people here that can be discussing all of these things. And, you know, what I'd like to encourage people to do is to not know everything, but to try and experience as much as you can. Because experience is very different to knowledge, and you'll actually lose a lot of the beauty that the world has to offer. But don't forget the creative side. I've had a creative swim career as well. That I love the beauty of being in the water and the way that it moves.
Well, we are going to take questions, students. I hope one of you has a question out here for one of these athletes. Anyone? Yes. Can you tell me who you are and where you're from?
Okay. I'm Sophie from England, and my question is, do you believe in tapering in swimming?
Without the taper, there's no way that you can build to a crescendo and fine-tune yourself. It's sort of like playing the Stradivarius violin. I mean, it's the best violin in the world, and we would think of our bodies as being the Stradivarius violin, but if it's not tuned properly, you're going to get poor music out of it. So the taper is a part of that tuning process, put simply.
I think taper is an inexact science. I think it's more mystical and magical than what any scientist can tell you. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But if you want to be a top athlete, you have to be the best on your very worst day. That's what you have to do in training, so that if it's a good or a bad taper, it doesn't matter.
You know, one thing I want to touch upon is other students think about any other questions that they have. I think it's so important to look at your strengths and your weaknesses and who you are. And, as we're talking to students, to say, don't be afraid of failure. Talk about some of those moments for you. Ian, I know that you retired early. You tried to come back for the London Olympics, and it didn't work out. You didn't qualify for Australia's Olympic team in 2012. What did those moments in time do for you? How did you take that on and turn it into something else?
Well, I mean, I'm still coming back. It's just happening slower now than I thought it would. But I'm pleased that I did it. I'm pleased that I was prepared to take that risk again. I could have sat back and said, you know what, I'm happy with all the success, but I wanted another chance to fall back in love with my sport, because when I left it, I didn't love what I did like when I was a child. So I wanted something like that back in my life, which I got. After not making the Olympics, I was shattered. I didn't want to swim. I felt as though I'd let a lot of people down, including myself. But I decided to keep on swimming. I decided to train for 3 months and see how I felt about it. And again, I fell in love with what I did in training. So I continue, and I will be back racing. But, where a door closes, a window opens.
Because you all of a sudden began moderating for the BBC, correct?
I ended up hosting, the host broadcaster's coverage of the Olympic Games. So I had the best seat in the house to be talking about something that I loved. And, I would have loved to have been at the pool swimming there, but, this was probably the second best option.
And for you, Mark, your worst moment, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I think there were a lot of disappointments that I think I may have created in my own mind during the course of my athletic career. One that I tapped on, which is the silver medal in the 100-meter butterfly in Mexico City, when somebody in the audience would say, oh my goodness, I just wish I was an Olympian, and then he's complaining that he got a silver medal. Point was that I knew I had more in me. I was the world record holder, and I failed to compete at that level when it most counted. And as Ian had said, to be great is to be great at your worst moment, not your best. It's to be able to overcome those hardships. And when I think back about, what did Mark Spitz do to leave his legacy in the sport? And it was a sense of accomplishment that I had won all those medals. What is the perception of somebody that's an up-and-coming swimmer? And I sort of thought about it for a while, and I said, like the Olympic Games, it stands for Citius, Altius, Fortius, swifter, higher, and stronger. And for what we accomplish as Olympians, whether it's Ian or myself, become a matter of measure by all the youth of the world, perhaps not even born yet, to become great. And so my accomplishments were based on what I had accomplished. Did that inspire somebody? And I finally realized it did. His name was Michael Phelps. And what a greater sense of accomplishment for me that somebody could have been inspired by something that I had done and set out for himself to do that as well, and then beyond. So I'm just a small little chip in the poker game of life and sports. And Ian inspired also, for sure, Michael, because he was challenging him and raced against him personally. I never had that chance. I mean, my mom said, don't worry about races, you know, and you don't have a horse in the horse race. I mean, so, but he had that experience. And he too left a legacy for people in his country and for the sport of swimming. So the two of us were having breakfast the other day, and I sort of sat back and I said, you know, between the two of us, we have so many medals and we've inspired so many people. How could we possibly feel sorry for ourselves and our own personal gratification if in fact we inspired somebody to want to just do a little bit better tomorrow? So to me, that's what I feel about the sport.
And you guys are also inspiring others in many other ways in your philanthropy work. And Ian, I know that you just won Australia's Human Rights Award. In fact, I think he deserves a round of applause for that.
Thank you.
You have been a passionate advocate for Indigenous people for over a decade now. You have a charity, Fountain for Youth. Why these causes?
Do you know what? I had to accept the award a week ago and do the video because I'm here. And, you know, I was really proud of it. But, you know, there's a lot of people that work in this field that don't have the voice that I have. And the reason I work in this area, if people don't know, in remote Indigenous communities in Australia, we have some of the extreme poverties that you'd associate with places in Africa or perhaps Latin America or Southeast Asia. I didn't know about it. And I went to these communities, and in a country that is as wealthy as Australia, we have a responsibility to actually look after the citizens who are the most needy. And at the moment, our government chooses to ignore that. And so the work that we do at a fundamental level, everyone assumes that the government's doing, and they're not. So I've been working in this area and, you know, working alongside Indigenous people to try and reconcile, you know, what this past difference is, the injustice that's happened over centuries now, and trying to make it right. So I'm very proud of what we do and very pleased for the award.
Well, congratulations. And well deserved. And Mark, for you with the Laureus Foundation to help build self-esteem, tell everyone about that.
Well, in 1999, a gentleman by the name of Johan Rupert that is the chairman of the Richemont Group, which is Cartier, Alfred Dunhill, came to me along with about 20 other athletes and said, I have this great idea, and what we would do is we would get together and donate money for athletic programs for challenged children that didn't have a chance in war-torn areas. And it's not a program to develop athletes to become world champions, but to give them a sense of security and self-well-being and teach them about companionship and team leadership and teamwork. The program has been around for the last 12 years, and I'm proud to say that over the last 12 years, we've had over 1.5 million children go through this program. At any one given time, 24/7 in the world, we have about almost 200,000 kids in our programs. Our commitment is between $60 to $80 million a year to run those programs, and we fundraise. It's all volunteer. I travel all over the world, usually make 2 or 3 trips, and for me, this is sort of what I feel is my sense of responsibility. And also—
And where did that come from? You know, because there's so many athletes that are out there and they just said, okay, let me just make my money, grab my endorsements, and I'm done. What is it about the two of you that have decided to really give back to your community?
I think we're sensitive, and I think we're sensitive to understand that there was a lot of support for me personally of how I became successful. I feel obligated and I enjoy it. I get a thrill out of it. It's like winning gold medals, but in a different way.
I get a thrill out of it. You know, I think to do work in the area of charity is the most selfish thing you can do because of how much you get out of it. But you also are giving back. And look, it's not for everyone, and it's not that every athlete needs to do this. We all need to do this. We each have a commitment, whether we have a high profile or no profile, to be able to assist other people. You know, and it's not handouts, it's hands up. And, you know, this is where we can talk about things like this. is how do we come together as a human family and be able to solve some of the world's issues. And we can do it if we're prepared to do it.
That's right. We're all in it together. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.
Mark Spitz and Ann Thorpe. Thank you.